We are IABC, a global community of communication professionals practicing with integrity and passion. We're diverse. Diverse as the industries and disciplines we work in. With thousands of members on every continent, we're alive with knowledge and experience. We're the voice of communication practice. We use the power of communication to connect people to ideas, to job opportunities, and to other professionals. We spark conversations. We create connection. And we have fun. We're focused on insights and results. Sure, we like cool creative, but it has to stick in the hearts and minds of our audience and provide value to our organization. We're about global best practices that are current and relevant. We live by a code of ethics. We support a global certification program. And we recognize the best of the best around the world. So, what's in it for you? Well, start with our lively and varied networking events, our regional and international conferences, our certification programs, and our award shows. Whether you're an experienced communicator or new to the field, whether you work for a corporation, government, agency, or nonprofit, IABC fits your personality and your professional goals. IABC. We use communication to engage, influence, counsel, and execute. We connect communicators around the world. We are IABC.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can anyone confirm that I'm heard and seen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Can hear you.
So good afternoon, everyone. I was really enjoying the introductory video from IABC. Just really shows how impactful the group is. So good afternoon again, everyone. Welcome to the 8th edition of the Virtual Talk Series powered by IABC's West Africa Interest Group. So the West Africa Interest Group is a team that works within the IABC team. My name is Tombra Nana, and I'm honored to be your moderator today. I miss the times when we really used to talk about safety talks before especially the COVID talks before we have events. But we are hoping that you are safe where you are, wherever you're joining from. Please just ensure that you are in a safe area, and in case there's an emergency, you can respond. Okay, and I also hope that we've enjoyed, I hope I'm not the only one who enjoyed the introductory video. The details of joining our association is right there, and you can see them on the screen as well. I'll tell you a bit more about IABC as we go through these slides. Okay, so IABC is an international, so I'll just say what it means in full. It's in the International Association of Business Communicators. It's a global network of communication professionals committed to improving our organization effectiveness through strategic communication. So it's an association where we ensure that we get the best for all our members globally, and it's a really, really strong network. You're encouraged to join our events globally. And the link to join, to become a member today, you can see the link right there on our screen, www.iabc.com/membership. I think it's really clear and it's very easy to join the group. Just a click of that button and you'll be able to be a member. It was very easy for me to join a long time ago. And this is our team leads for the West Africa Interest Group. We can see them on the screen. I won't go through their names, and I think most of us will be familiar with them. And for those of us that are not familiar with them, we are advising you and encouraging you to join. You get to see a lot more and learn a lot from networking and really the strong network. Okay, now permits me to introduce our distinguished panel. I think by the time I go through the names, you'll see how important and how great the panelists are. So I have Antoinette Edodo. Antoinette is the head business transformation of Africa Prudential PLC. Can you put on a video, say hi? Okay.
My video is on.
Is on, yes.
Hello,
and
everyone.
we have, yes, thanks. So we have Ginikanwa Frank Durugo. Ginika is the head corporate communication at Lafarge Africa PLC. Ginika, can you say hi as well?
Hello, everyone.
Yes.
Please, can you tell the admin to enable my video? I don't know what happened.
Okay. Okay, that will be done shortly.
Thank you.
So admin has noted that, yes. Okay, and so we have, I mean, without any particular order, we have Shola Abulu. Shola is the principal consultant. She's as you must have seen a picture in the earlier slides. She's the principal consultant at Shola Abulu and Associates, and she's also sits on the African Region Board of the IABC, as we saw earlier in the slide. So Shola, can we say hi? I know most people know you already.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, and lovely to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so if we confirm that everyone's video is up, we would like to have a quick picture of our panelists and myself. As we see, I'm in the midst of great women. We're still celebrating women. So we have a list of really distinguished and special women who will be talking through to us today. So can we see everyone? Everyone's video is up now? Okay, so we'll take a group photo. Okay. I'm assuming that has been done. Admin, can you confirm that has been done?
Yes.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and yes. Okay, so we'll just go ahead. Thanks very much. And as I said, I'm in the midst of really great women, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun. Everyone on the call, I implore you to also just try to be in a place where you can really pay full attention and get as much information as we can get. It's going to be very interactive as well. We have our Q&A section for you to put up your questions, but we also have the chats area for a lot of our chats and banter and everything we want to talk about. We want to make it as interactive and as fun as possible. As much as we're all learning, we also want to have some fun while we're doing this. Okay, dear participants, I also want to inform you that this is being recorded. I think it's important for us to make you know that this session is going to be recorded as well for future references. Thanks so much for giving us that permission to do that. So ladies and gentlemen, let's go straight to the point so that we don't take too long. We can see a lot of people coming in and the chat area is already being used. So thanks for that. Let's keep it up. My name is Tombra, as I said at the beginning. It's no longer news that technology shapes the way we work and we communicate. Any organization that is really serious about development or really serious about catching up with what the world and the challenges of the world, and to even have competitive advantages over any other company, you have to take technology seriously, because technology is that fuel that now drives us for productivity. You know, it's even now, it's almost what's will make you survive or not. You know, it's a VUCA world. We've heard of all the challenges in the world, but without technology, you're going to really be slow to the market. You're going to be slow to respond to challenges. And we can even see with AI what is happening in the world. Without technology, if you don't even understand what happens there, then you see yourself several years behind and your competitors will just take over and leave you behind. So it's essential that we bridge the digital divide in the workplace to ensure that everyone has access and also everyone has knowledge and the tools that are required. In the workplace now, you have different generation of people. So you have to, companies have to find a way to, you know, carry all categories of staff along to make sure that employees of different ages feel comfortable and there's a lot of communication that can go across the bridges. Therefore, this afternoon, we'll attempt to explore and highlight some of these key areas that we really need to discuss about. And that's why we have the great ladies on the panel today. We're going to be talking about some of these challenges and to ensure that the digital gap in the multi-generational companies is really bridged, including communication strategies and, you know, just to ensure that all employees are valued and your voice is heard. And, you know, we've heard a lot about inclusion. You know, we need to make sure that all employees feel included in decision-making in companies. So this webinar is designed to be interactive. Please, as I mentioned, feel free to drop your comments in the chat box, but when there are questions, I think it will be important to put them in the Q&A box. Just push them down to us and we'll be here to pick them up. We'll start off with a few questions that we've received from some of you pre-webinar. And we'd like to give our panelists 2 minutes to, just to tell us about their opening comments. And they will talk to us about their early thoughts on the topic, especially given the fact that technology itself seems to be changing daily. So I'll give the floor to Shola, if you don't mind. Yeah, opening remarks.
Yes, thank you, Tombra. Can everybody hear me? I hope you can hear me real good. Yes, excellent. So thank you everyone for joining. I see we have about 35 people. Please just drop your comments in the in the chat. Keep this going. Let it be interactive as much as possible. And then if you have any questions, you can drop it in the Q&A. We'll take it as we go along. So today's topic is really about how do we bridge the digital divide in a multi-generational workforce. And this is something that I'm quite passionate about because I have seen how the world has evolved. I'm Gen X, and I have seen how the world evolved. We entered the workplace where there were no computers. I remember typing my projects on computers. It all happened while I was in the workplace. And I have seen how people have had to, the older generation have had to transform over time. And I've actually seen the opportunities that have slipped through people's hands because of their inability to transition. I have seen people who were able to transition and how it catapulted them over and above. And later on, we're going to be talking about the difference between digital natives and digital immigrants. And I won't go too much into that, but it really is a challenge. And I think some workforces struggle more than others. If you're working in a younger tech space, you're likely to have maybe just 2 generations, Gen Z and Millennial, maybe your board members, maybe Gen X. But if you're working in institutions, public sector, multinational companies and established companies that are maybe 50 years and older, you're likely to have this older generation, 4 generations, and then you have the complexity of how do you move everyone along into that digital transformation space. So I think it's very challenging. There's a lot of leadership, premium that has to go into making things happen in the way that they should. Some organizations struggle more than others. Some people will struggle more than others. Some move, quite seamlessly. So it's really about understanding your own individual context, where you need to be, and then leadership working in an inclusive way to bring everybody along. And I think there will be opportunity for us to talk a little bit more about how this works out. And I'll be keen to hear from people on the call as well. If you've had any experience in your place of work that showed, things that worked, tensions between generations, please share it. This is really going to be very interactive. We're all here to learn. Thank you very much for having me. And yeah, back to you, Tombra.
Thank you so much, Shola. I think that's a very good introductory remark there. So as she mentioned, please put in your experiences. What have you experienced in your workplace? How is your workspace? Is everybody Gen Z? Is it a mix of a few generations? So I would like to hear from Antoinette as well. Antoinette, over to you.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. Not sure if I can add anything very vastly different from what Shola has said, but I was bequeathed when she talked about digital natives versus digital immigrants, and I don't think that's an age-related category. Some people have more affinity towards understanding how to use technology, and it might not be age-related at all. So that would be the anomaly, in say multi-generational workplace, because it categorizes people based on their age. But I think that just naturally disposed to be curious in technology is not an age-related criteria. But I'm just really keen to hear from everyone, especially the attendees, and their own personal experiences. I'm basically
Mhm.
living the experience of a multi-generational workplace here. And so it's a very interesting dynamic, but I think that there are many strategies, and we'll talk about some of them during the course of the webinar,
Okay.
that you can use to soften the landing for everyone, regardless of their age.
Thank you so much. So we're going to be hearing a lot from Antoinette, and she'll be giving us a few tricks on how to really bridge the gap across generations. So we have Ginika as well. Hello, Ginika. Can we hear from you?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much
Thank you.
for having me here this afternoon. I'm really excited to be here with such phenomenal ladies, and also, just to listen to everyone, add to this conversation. So I'm really excited. And the topic it resonates with me really, because I believe that people should be curious about what happens around them. So I believe that you don't just sit and watch and, life just takes over. I believe that, when things are happening, things are changing, at least you can even just ask questions to find out how that can work for you. So
yeah.
For organizations, for instance, it's important that you assess your situation, because what works for this company will not work for the other. So you have to really understand, the makeup of your workforce, and then you develop strategies to be able to bridge that gap. Of course, there are so many ways to do that, and I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about that today. So really, I'll just say companies should be open-minded. You just embrace technology, be curious about what is happening, make sure you're taking steps to keep at pace. So I'm looking forward to the conversation this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ginika. I've started taking notes already. I'm learning a lot already. So I'll pick up a few things. So we have to be a bit more proactive. You don't have to wait for the world to evolve around you. You can pick up some of this, a lot of lessons, and you don't have to say because you belong to a particular generation, then that means you won't be good with technology. You can go out of your way and make things happen. So what we're going to do today quickly is to dive in. So what we'll do is to make it just to make the discussions really flow, we'll start talking about what is even a multi-generational workplace. What exactly happens in a multi-generational workplace? So I'll give an introductory remark, and then I'll go on to our panelists to really tell us a bit more, give us more gist about this. So a multi-generational workplace is one in which the employees span different generations. I think as Shola was mentioning, in some companies, you might not really see the full 4 or 5 dimensions that come with generations, but we have the Gen Z, which is everybody knows is very popular now. We have the millennials, we have the Gen X, and we have the baby boomers. So these are people that were probably born in the 40s, 50s, 60s. It basically goes down generations. Generation Z is those that were born 90s and towards the 2000 years. So some of these generations there are some companies where you find a mix of these generations, and in some other companies you just find, especially the Gen Z and maybe millennials in the new tech companies probably. So I'll go over to Shola. I'll just ask you, what is the generational digital divide about?
So yes, thanks, Nombra. And like Antoinette said, the digital divide actually. So if you look at it in a broad context, the digital divide, when it's normally said in the context of society and governance, they're making a distinction between people who have access to technology and the internet and those who don't. In the workplace, it's not necessarily that way, because in the workplace, they will give you the tools that you need for what you're going to do. So if you have to use a computer, even if you're in security, you have to do access control, there's a screen in front of you, you have to learn how to use it. So it's not really about the access to, it's now about the affinity that you have for technology, your comfort level with it, and the extent that you are able to, to grow in it. That is really, and that is why I have seen, how would I say, the differentiation that brings about a digital divide in some levels of the organization. And this is very real. I worked in the oil industry for many years, and there was a point at which when we started doing the digitalization, I saw how it was playing out even in the technical fields. Geosciences, They started bringing in 4D seismic. They started running things. People who had been running the boats, FPSOs offshore, they've been running it through mechanical systems, now had to be using 4D technology, artificial intelligence. Some people, in fact, I heard of some things that happened. A lot of the older generation people struggled. They really, really struggled. And I don't even know how they're managing that space now. So when I heard that story, I was like, wow, this is really real. For some of us, it was just about learning how to use softwares. But for some other people, it was really managing very complex AI, computer-generated solutions in a different way from the way they have been taught. Even in the medical field, for instance, I have seen the difference. Where I've had a number of invasive surgeries, so I've had a lot of time to talk to doctors, and I've seen the difference between the doctors who are used to, surgery the old way, and then the newer doctors who know how to use the laser technology. And when they do it, they work with very small incisions, and you find many of those older doctors really struggling. In fact, I am yet to see an older doctor, at least baby boomer doctor, that has embraced the newer whatever. They insist if you ever fall into their hands, they will cut you like the way they were cutting you in 1966. Do you understand? And they insist that that's the way it's going to be done. Whereas the younger guys, they never even learned that way of cutting, so they will not do it. So we have that working side by side, and the hospitals are not making a conscious effort to say, we will not allow anybody to use this kind anymore, or this is the plan we're going to put in place to make sure that everybody transits, because this is less invasive, gives a smaller recovery time for the patient, all of that. So that's just an example, a practical example of the kind of challenge that we have when you have people who were very skilled and trained in a particular way, and then technology has gone far beyond that. It's now left for the leaders to decide for themselves the threshold that they will have for this transformation to take place and what they need to do in that process. So I hope that answers your question. Back to you.
Yeah, very clear, very clear. I think I'd rather have the Gen Z doctors operate on me then. But yeah, I think it's really, really key to what you've talked about is very key to continue to develop and just continue to embrace technology for what it is. I'll move over to Ginika now. Ginika, so what factors attributed for this divide? We've talked about the digital divide. What are the factors that can be attributed to this divide? That's like one question for you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tondra. So there are several factors that can contribute to this divide. And first, I'll start with advancement in technology. How modern technology continues to evolve, through innovation. And so you come to organizations, there are several systems, there are several procedures to get things done. So let's take some of the processes that we have that we know, like your payment processes. Probably you'll be using an old ERP system, you want to move to SAP and things like that. It's a whole lot of work, for an organization that is multi-generational. How do you move people from doing things that they are used to doing things in a better way and a faster way? So I'll say advancement in technology is a big factor, and it keeps evolving. Every year you get new stuff, every month you get new things. So people really need to keep at pace. Another thing would be communication styles and preferences. People not being open to new things. You're used to doing things in a certain way. So for instance, in an organization, you're used to getting information through emails. And now we're saying, okay, let's move from emails, or let's say, okay, memos, for instance. You're used to, the older generation, they're used to, sending out information via memos. You want to get something approved and you're moving from one seat to the other, and it takes like 2 or 3 days. Meanwhile, these days you have applications that can help you send out via your email, and then people are able to approve, and it moves fast, and you can do that within hours or just minutes as well. So people moving on from the things that they are used to what is more efficient and what is faster. So those preferences can continue to cause that divide in organizations. And we also have stereotypes, unconscious biases. So you're from a younger generation, you're thinking that someone from an older generation, is a bit slow and resistant to change. And then the older generation is thinking that the people that are younger do not have experience, just like the example that Shola gave. I'm sure the older doctors are saying, wow, this is how we did it and it came out better. You don't have experience, you don't know what we've been through. So that also continues to fester, and people are not open-minded to find ways to be more efficient and, faster. So differences in values, mindsets, leadership style, you just want to maintain what you've seen, what you know, because, the older generation, they would like to pass down information. The younger ones want to be more collaborative. They want to engage and, just more linear focused styles. So it's about being open-minded, like I said. So these factors truly contribute to the divide, and organizations really need to be aware that these factors are there and find ways to fix them.
Thank you so much, Ginika. I think it's really clear, came out really clear. Thanks for that. So modern technology, communication styles and preferences, stereotypes also, these are some of the factors that have really caused the digital divide, right? So we'll go quickly. I think I'll just make I'll give Shola 1 minute and Antoinette 1 minute to just quickly talk about what strategies can be implemented quickly. What strategies can be implemented to address the digital divide between younger, more tech-savvy employees and older employees who may be less comfortable, as Antoinette said, with new technology. Shola first.
I don't think Antoinette has spoken, right? I think Antoinette, you haven't gone a second round.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you go before me. Yeah.
Okay, Antoinette.
Okay. So strategies implemented to bridge that communication gaps, right? So I want to play devil's advocate here and not make it look as if it's always the older generation that needs to play catch up. The younger generation needs to empathize a bit more sometimes, right? Sometimes you need to understand that things could be done differently, and then you can come out with just as good as a result. Now we know that technology makes things more efficient, faster, more accuracy. But then when you have a colleague that is not as savvy as you are, what do? You don't lord it over them, you empathize. So in that regard, I want to make sure that we're not just making the pull into the technology world, or the push rather, we're bringing in a pull as well. So not just the push approach. I also think that it's important that one of the strategies that we bring into play is to ensure that we as an organization, you kind of come to realize that there are just some things that are inefficient to continue with, right? If people still have those options open, it will be a problem, right? Because they will always fall back into it. You categorically say as an organization and agree that you're moving in one direction or in a different direction or in a more efficient direction. For instance, email has been proven to not be a very effective way to communicate any longer, right? At least internally to your colleagues, right? There are so many other ways to communicate now, and email should be the least kind of way to actually get work going. There are productivity tools out there in the market. Also, even just reteaching email etiquette, as simple as that, right, can help people to use it in a better way, in a more efficient way. If you're still an organization that is heavily based in email, to now start pulling people out of that behavior or out of those patterns, you re-engage how to use email and teach them how to use the email etiquette differently. Instead of hitting reply and sending a reply all the time. I know a lot of email tools have reaction buttons now. You can actually just react to an email. You don't always have to like flood people's inbox in that regard. If your organization is one that is really lean on adopting tools, you might decide that a chat tool might be a good way to soften the landing for the organization, as opposed to just bringing something really complex or tech to them in the first place. Make it a soft landing for them to start to engage outside of work situations in still a work tool, but in a social engaging kind of way. It helps to relax the hesitations to adopt new tools. But I think that from a leadership standpoint, I think it's important that the middle management is also very empowered to understand why the organization is moving in a new direction, to make sure that they are able to pass that message down to the rest of the organization, but they buy in into it, because a lot of the resistance in innovation comes from experience at the end of the day. So it's actually those who are most experienced that you resist the biggest change from at the end of the day. And that's where you have to actually have some kind of emotional intelligence to navigate those conversations, because they would usually hold leadership positions in the organization, and it can actually disrupt what you're trying to do. So yes, so there are those strategies that you can use, but I think empathy is a strategy as well for the other side of the fence.
Thank you very much, Antoinette. Thank you very much. I think it's very clear. One of the strategies we can use is empathy across generations. I'll just pick up a few comments from, I can see the chat area is buzzing with plenty of comments, and let's keep it going. Let's keep at it. So I'm seeing a comment. I'll just read a few from Carol Songa. So all of us saying, I'm a millennial who went from working with baby boomer generation and Generation X for a decade to working with Gen Zs, and Carol is saying she has a lot of catching up to do. Of course you do, but that's why we're here. We'll help each other to, learn how to. So I'll read a few more. Okay, it's still Carol. Technology is on the move, progressing every day. So everyone is on the alert and on the run to catch up. It is certainly more challenging for the older generation to catch up. I think Antoinette has helped us there. The younger generation is going to help the older generation to catch up. I'll pick up one question we have a few questions, but I'll just pick up one from our questions and answer section. So I'll pick this question from Felgona Ocheng. Good afternoon, Felgona. So does it mean that in order to accommodate Gen Zs, we need to have strategies that are more digital savvy? Do we prioritize digital communication in our strategies, or is it more driven by targets, audience definitions? So I think who is going to help us with that? Ginika. Ginika just spoke, right? No. Okay, Ginika, help us with that.
Okay.
Do I read the question again? Or did you get it clearly?
No, I have it right here.
Okay.
I can see it here.
Okay.
Do we prioritize digital comms in our strategies? I'll say yes. And it doesn't mean that if you prioritize digital communication that you're throwing away traditional forms of communicating. All right. Just like Antoinette said, we need to have more empathy. And what that means is finding a common ground. If you work in an organization that has people from different generations, it's not a one size fits all, but you have to have a focal point, because you don't want to sit and stare. You don't want your competitors to catch up with you. So what do? You find a way to mix these strategies, right? So for instance, if you're designing your employee engagement strategy or your internal communication strategy, for instance, you cannot just focus on Slack and WhatsApp and all of that. You should have the traditional methods, the face-to-face engagements, the posters, they still work, you can decide to use digital screens, since you're moving towards digital more. But what I'm trying to say is that you have to always consider those that are in the older generation. And to make this point clearer, if you're working in an organization where you have plants and sites, guys that are in the field, they don't have access to their emails all the time, so they are working all day. After that, they want to get to know what is happening in the organization. Meanwhile, the other guys that are in the office, they have their computers are in their faces, they have their phones, they're moving very quickly. In some sites, you're not even allowed to use your phone to enter certain areas. Those are your employees, those are your contractors. They need to know what is going on. So it is so important that we prioritize digital transformation, because that's where the world is moving towards. But it doesn't mean that we'll leave some people behind, because we still need others as well. As we're all saying this, we also recognize some of the advantages of having a workforce that is multi-generational. So you have an expanded pool of talent. You're able to share ideas. The younger ones will share ideas, the older ones will share ideas, and you come up with very great outcomes. Able to solve problems faster. There's an opportunity to learn and mentor others. So let's prioritize digital communications. However, we should have a good balance in our communications and engagement strategies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Guinea Kanwe. I'm sure you have answered the question. I think the way you rounded out up is just so succinct. So you've said the balance. It's very important to have the balance right, because there's value from different generations. So why don't you work in it? Why don't you try to optimize the value you get from across the generations while you're working in a multi-generational space? Okay, so we'll move quickly. Please keep the comments coming and the questions. Our panelists, you can see they are ready to really shed some lights as well. Okay, so we'll move over to the workplace communication. So communication in the workspace, our panelists have actually talked about some of it, but we'll still put up a few questions. So there are different ways of communication. There are emails, and Antonietta has mentioned that there are, there are chats, there are emoticons that you can use to respond to emails and even chats. All this make the workplace and the divide in in a multi-generational workplace to really soften up. So I'll pick up, so I'll go to Shola now and ask, okay, so how can companies ensure that all employees, regardless of their technological proficiency, are able to communicate effectively with one another?
Thanks, Tombra. So I think, and I really like all the contributions that have been said so far. I think if we back up a little bit, I think what's really important is for leaders to begin to ask themselves, why is this important in the first place? I think once you set that same for yourself, what are my strategic objectives? What are we trying to achieve? What's important? And then if you come up with that business case that says it's important that we all communicate and collaborate in a certain way, then what do we need to do? What are the behaviors I need to see? What are the prevalent mindsets that I have in this organization? What values are helpful and what values are hindering us? We have to take a look at those kind of things. What kind of collaborative behaviors do I want to see? Because I think when you do that, and this is even more important if you're working in a complex organization that is multi-layered, multi-locational, all kinds of people. Like when Guinea Kanwe was talking, I already knew that context. She's talking about field workers. You have some people somewhere remote location, you can't even reach them. You have to gather them into a room. If you want to talk to them for town halls, you hook them up separately. If you're working in that kind of space, you have to meet people where they are and then understand what the pain points are. I was once communications manager for a relatively big organization working across locations. And depending on whatever we wanted to achieve for any initiative, we did a stakeholder mapping for our employees to determine, okay, for this transformation or this change we're going to bring about, who is going to be most impacted? What do we want people to know? How do we want them to feel? What action? Anything that required action from people. There were some people that is only information we're giving, just be aware that we are transiting from SAP to this one or from this to that. There's some other people, you are going to be a super user. So I'm sorry, I cannot just be having, even if I have a town hall and we're having a messaging, we will end up doing train-the-trainer sessions for you. We will have several levels of cascades for those of you that are going to be super users. So it's really about how you understanding the context of your organization. Now, there was when Antoinette was talking about older, younger generations need to empathize. Me, I'm sorry, I don't have empathy for older generation, because where I used to work, what I saw more often was older generation beating down on the younger generation. That was what I saw more often than not. So I am part of that generation, and I'm sorry, I have no empathy. Zero, as in zero. I'm sorry, you really have to, because most of the time, what I saw, and maybe it was the other way around. It was people not like, I run my business now. I have a lot of young people working with me because I realize and I recognize that it's in my interest to have them around me because they understand certain things better. I have an affinity for whatever things. So I consider myself an immigrant, but then not the same kind of affinity that I have a Gen Z son. I have two Gen Z sons. My Gen Z sons, I mean, the way they work things, sorry, I don't have it. I have to learn, So for that reason, I go out of my way to bring younger people close. I think these are the sort of behaviors that I would want organizations, to do more of. That bridge building between generations, especially where it's helpful. And I think it was Ginika that mentioned, it's also, I think we have things to offer one another. So the older generations have corporate memory, which is very important, and organizational savviness. They know how to work the politics. So what we should look for is how do we create a symbiotic relationship between the older and the younger generations, particularly in these complex organizations where they do not see them as threats. There was a lot of dynamic going on in my former work life that I didn't understand. There was just a lot going on in that space. So I think if you find yourself in that kind of context where there's tension between generations, don't ignore it and find a way to address it, because it will affect the way in which you transform. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shola. So you're re-emphasizing the points. There has to be a balance. We have to do this together in that workspace. The younger generation, I know you're a very empathetic person, so so yes. So let's keep that up. So I'll pick up a comment from our chat section. So there's Olutayo Erantiola. Hello, afternoon. How are you doing here, Olutayo? So there's a change. So I'm reading Olutayo's comment now. There's a change in the way that technology has affected the media space. That is very interesting. So there's a difference, I'm quoting you now, there's a difference between the way in which blog posts are written when compared to the way where print media writes. So in the generations before, it was more print media, but now, we have blog posts and Instagram and the like. So at this time, the flexibility of the world keeps changing daily, and the older generation will have to engage netizens to make work easier for them. Yes. If companies want to translate generations, it needs to embrace the new generation. I think it's clearly what Shola and the other panelists have actually been talking about. So let's keep that going. One more question on communication in the workspace. I think I'll pick this one from the questions that have been sent to us before now. So what strategies can be implemented to bridge the communication gap between employees who are accustomed to different modes of communication? I think Antonius has talked about this. I'll take it back to you again if you have some things to add to this. So what strategies can we implement if we want to bridge the communication gap between employees who are accustomed to different modes of communication? So the older ones probably more emails, and the younger ones probably more instant messaging. Antonius?
Okay, so kind of touched on this earlier already, but maybe I'll delve a bit deeper in terms of being able to even come up with those kinds of tools in the first place. So maybe when you're evaluating a tool, for instance, it'll be more important for you to inform yourself based on the fact that you have a diverse workforce. The capabilities are very varied and the competency levels are very varied as well. So a highly technical tool may not be a perfect fit for an organization that is, not ahead of the tech learning curve. If you want to take into consideration, the fact that your learning curve is steep, so you want to provide, things that allow people to low barrier entry in that regard. Like I said, courtesy of email etiquette, using the reaction buttons to save the mailbox of others, tools that bring the best of both worlds. For example, being able to create a task from an email, right? Conversation. You want to be able to attach an email to an instant message. You want to be able to screen record as opposed to constantly being in meetings so that people can work in an asynchronous manner. These are all the various tactics that you can employ. But if you're not curious, you will not find these things. They are embedded in a lot of the tools today. And so you have to search. You have to want to know. You have to want to ask questions at the end of the day. You don't always have to go the text route. You can go the audio route. Send a voice note instead of sending a text. Let them hear the tone in your voice when you're sending a message. Maybe you want to send a message to your team or give some direction to them. Let them understand the tone in your voice as you do that. It doesn't always have to come with emails. Emails might be black and white. Even text is black and white in the broad spectrum. But when you send a message with a screen record or an audio, it's very different. Or even a video message. Why don't you do your next message out to your team in a video format, right? And send that to them. So just being able to employ these different ways. And there's so many tools out there that afford you to do that. You don't need to do any extra, in terms of budgeting or expense in that regard. It comes with the package. All these tools are so competitive. So, but being curious, being able to pick those tools in a very encompassing way, right? Because your workforce is diverse. Don't just stick to one kind, of way of communicating or being. Try to show that you can embrace the different types. Before now, and I like to use WhatsApp as a good example, because WhatsApp is the perfect example of bridging generations together. Your grand aunties and your grand uncles and your fathers and mothers, and they are now sending videos of themselves, and we make fun of them because when you do the video call, it's just one eye that you can see. Like, no, mommy, put the phone here so we can see your whole face. But they are now, the barrier is being dropped, right, in that regard. And they actually used to fear technology, right? They used to fear it. And I remember I saw a post today in Ken put up. There's a bit of a fear. Something you don't know, you kind of tend to fear it. Something you don't understand, you kind of tend to, shy away from engaging with it. But you drop that down and then you make it fun as well. Fun to learn and be curious.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Antoinette. I think that was really enlightening. When you use the word WhatsApp, just the pronunciation of WhatsApp already, you just know which generation people are, because we have a WhatsApp, we have WhatsApp, we have so many ways of pronouncing it. So I think when anybody is talking now, I'll try to find out which generation the person belongs to. I'll try the voice notes once with my manager and see if that will go well. Okay, good one. Thanks. Very enlightening. So I'll pick up a question here. So keep the comments coming, the questions as well. I think let's just make it as interactive as possible, and we can learn from each other as well. So I'll pick this question from Oladipupo Ogunmakinde. I think I got that right. So how can the digital divide, this question will be for Ginika. How can the digital divide be bridged in an organization whose management is totally made up of older generations? We've kind of touched on this as well, but Ginika, 1 or 2 words on that?
Okay. All right. So there are different ways. I would say you have some of the proactive ways and some of the reactive ways. And I'll give a case in point. You've been employed as a communications lead, for instance, and you have people in management that are mostly from the older generation. So it's your responsibility to make them see what they don't know, to take them through what is in it for them. Not just what is in it for them as individuals, but in terms of business growth. So we understand where we are going to as an organization. We know our objectives. We know what success will look like for us. And then we are bringing to bear that technology is the only way to get there. So we don't necessarily have a choice. And when you're communicating that to your ESCO, you're showing, the business case. You're trying to defend your points with facts, not just speculations. We think we're going to get there. You show them numbers, and you try to see for them to see how the business will become better. The bottom line is improved when we adopt technology. So that's on the one hand, but you don't just leave them there to say, accept this. It's a change management process. People need to change their mindsets about certain things. So in addition to communicating and, creating awareness about the benefits of moving to digital transformation, there's the part of training, getting people up to speed around things that they don't know, understanding the workforce, the segregation, what do we need to improve? I'll give a case in point right now. At some point during my work, we had to share information to everyone that was so critical that we couldn't just do it in English. So what did we do? That same information, we had to translate it in 4 different languages, including broken English. And that was how we took it to the locations for people to understand how important it is for them to change their mindsets about a particular issue. So it gets to a point you have to come up with strategies to help people to understand the benefits, how it's going to improve their life. So if someone would stay in the office for 5 hours to do a simple finance process, meanwhile with digital technology, it takes you an hour. You're telling the person you can get home quickly to go and see your family. Why don't we get on board? So training is required. A lot of awareness is required. Trust me, if you're driving this type of change, it's not a one-day thing or a one-week thing. You know, it takes time to train people. It takes time to create awareness. It takes time to actually achieve that change. But the most important thing for organizations to note, both the ESCO and employees, is that there are benefits to this, and you need to communicate the benefits for them to see what they will gain when they hop in. Let me put it that way. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Guinea Castle. I think it's just you've made very, very great points, and I think I've taken a lot of notes. And we need to really emphasize training, and we need to be patient because we are talking about different generations that are going to pick up things at different rates. So it's very important for organizations to be patient and, you know, make it very clear what exactly is the benefits of this that we are talking about. Okay, I'm teaching you how to use Excel. What exactly is the benefits? How will that help you? So I can see the comment section really buzzing. We talked about what's up. So our older generation in Nigeria, I want to guess they call it what's up. So anywhere you're joining from, just if you can put down a few things, a few words, how is it called where you are? What's up? Especially with the younger, I mean, the Gen Z should call it the way it should be. What about the Gen X? What do we call it? What do other people call it around you? Okay, so I'll move over quickly. We are really we've been having so much fun and time has been fast spent. So I'll move over to technology and organizational transformation. So organizational transformation is a business strategy for change management intended to move an organization from where it currently is to a future state. And we have all clearly said in this webinar that technology plays a key role in moving a company from where they want to be and where they should be. Also applying the value from all generations also really will play a role, because you don't just want to have people thinking in only one kind of way. You want to have you want to encourage different generations to bring out the best value they can bring to move your company from one point to the other. So I'll take this to Antoinette now. So what can companies do to ensure that employees of all ages have access to technology tools and resources necessary to perform their job functions? So what can companies do to ensure that their employees of different generations have access to technology tools and resources to be able to perform their duties?
Okay, I think one of the
Antoinette?
things that you can, yes, can you hear me? Yes. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So I think one of the things that they can do is to encourage less paper use, right? It's one of the first things that you can do to pry people away from their old ways and then force them into the 21st century. You allow them to stop the reliance on a lot of hard copy, and then it makes them move into an e world, right, where things are being archived properly in a digital format, or you know less use on the printer. You can just send things via e-copies. So if you have a culture of just encouraging less paper use at the office, I think it's one of the ways that they can have a bit more access in those tools, where they are not allowed to submit something in a thick format. Then they would have to use and engage a tool to get it going. Something else is to upgrade devices. I think sometimes organizations forget that there's new versions of these things out there with new features and new and fun ways to engage, right? So provide new types of devices to bring them into the 21st century, and that is at par with what the generation of today, workforce of today, utilizes. So upgrade devices of people, in your workplace. Give iPads for mobile positions, if they're on the go, change those devices to be the most modern, versions of themselves. It brings them into the new functionalities of those devices as well. I think even just two little strategies, that you can start employing, can help. I think one of the other things is maybe being able to ensure that you promote based on merits, right? And making sure that you reward people accordingly for how they're actually adopting the use of technology. Make it part of maybe a temporary kind of measure within the organization. Gamify it, if you will, so that they can start to embrace, the access to those tools. Also, another thing is maybe you change your policies altogether, and then maybe it's a hard push, but once you change policy, people need to conform, right? So if you're finding it very difficult to get people on the bandwagon, you're trying many different ways and it's not working, you change the policies in a few ways, tweak it here and there, remove certain outdated policies, put in some fresh ones, refresh it, and then maybe you get them to start conforming in that way. Not knowing something is not a bad thing. It's not knowing and then not doing anything about the issue. That's where you have so it starts encouraging the culture to shift and change, have a more open love for learning, regardless of age. Yes, I think those are some of the ways that
thank you.
Can have that.
Thank you so. Yeah, thank you so much. Ginika is really, really clear. So companies need to upgrade their policies sometimes to make people to conform, and also companies should help us. They should upgrade their systems. Upgrade their systems. Don't use a very old system where you can't even apply new technology. People are talking about the new Windows. You're using Windows 84 or something like that. So thank you very much. I'll take this to Shola quickly while we move over to the next section. So what role can senior management play in driving digital transformation and promoting a more multi-generational tech-savvy workplace? Shola, did you get that?
Yep, I did. Thank you. So I think there's a lot they can do, and I think we've already touched on that. Actually, I think senior leadership sets the tone for the organization. And I liked a lot of what Antoinette was talking about in terms of changing policies, rewarding behaviors. I think there's just a whole lot. In every organization that I have ever been a part of where I have seen change, transformation of any kind take place, it begins and ends with leadership. They set the tone. I mean, if they make it clear that this is what you must do, everybody aligns. And those who cannot align, they, like they say, shape up or ship out, So I think having a plan as to what you're trying to achieve and then putting in place a very detailed and targeted communication and engagement strategy around how you build that shared vision, how you model it to everyone, and how the leader themselves sets the tone and champions it and shows how, this is really, really something that can be done. And in this kind of transformation, the leader has to then find champions within the organization that can also help them on that journey. Like I said, I cherish the years in which I spent working for a very large and complex organization because we did so many transformations. I observed the digital transformation, I observed the SAP transformation, I observed the structural transformation, the locational transformations. I went so many. And in every case, there were certain things I would need to do, which is build a shared vision, articulate the case for change in a very, very compelling way, communicate to different categories of people, let people be clear about why we're doing this, what is going to change, how it's going to impact them, what they are required to do, and the importance of making that change on a personal level. What Antoinette said is very important because everybody's looking for the what's in it for me. If you cannot articulate the what's in it for me, for your employees, they're not likely to recognize how important it is for them to change and then ask for help so that they can get the support that they need. But like I said, the leadership has to set the tone. And if they are able to do that, it is actually doable, even in the most complex organizations. I have found, my observation has been is that in places where transformation don't happen, I mean, you can look at it in Nigeria, it's because there's a tolerance for anyhowness. Anywhere the leaders have low tolerance for lack of change, the change doesn't exist. The transformation, the lack of transformation doesn't have space to breathe. But it is when the leaders do not set the right tone, they themselves are confused about the case for change. They're probably just doing it because the board asked them to. They're not invested in it, so they were just want to make sure that, okay, let's just tick the box. If you treat it like a tick the box exercise, then you will get the outcome of tick the box. But if you really want to achieve, you have to really carry people along. So very strong communication and engagement strategy. which is, and since this is IABC, it's important, I think, the mistake that some companies make is trying to transform without the communication. You cannot do that. The communication and the engagement is part and parcel of the transformation. And that is what makes the difference between the companies that are eventually able to transform different generations at different times at a targeted and a contextual space, and those who have laggards in the organization holding the business.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Shola. That was really quick and straight to the point. Okay, yeah, we have a few more comments and questions. So we have questions in the Q&A. We also have comments. Keep it coming. We'll come to pick a few of them shortly. So corporate culture. We've talked about, as our panelists have been talking, they talked about corporate culture while speaking. So there's a culture and how you manage different generations of people within your organization. It's very important to have that balance so that you can really move the company forward. So I'll ask Ginika a question now. So how can companies foster a culture of collaboration and inclusivity amongst employees of different ages and technological backgrounds? Ginika, did you get that question?
Yes, I did. Thank you. Yeah. I think it leads nicely from where Shola stopped. When she was talking about organizations developing a compelling engagement and communication strategy, I couldn't agree more. The people are the most important assets that you have in an organization. And if they don't feel engaged, they don't bring in their best. And so HR and communications, they need to work hand in hand to come up with a compelling strategy to drive the organization forward. And in writing that strategy, culture is also very critical. What do you want your organization to be known for? What is your DNA, for instance? People need to know what it is. I would even recommend that is wrong. If you're designing the culture of your organization, you have your core values. What does someone that work here look like? You define all of those things, and then you create awareness around it. So creating awareness around it is also about walking the talk. So as leaders, you have to lead by example. If you're saying that our culture right now is a culture of collaboration, we're going to be more inclusive, we're going to adopt technology, and the leaders are not leading by example, it's going to fail, trust me. So everybody needs to have that buy-in, come together and push this forward. So in your strategy, you need to set clear goals. When you set clear goals, because you have reviewed what you need to achieve success, you set the goals. When you set the goals, you communicate the goals to every employee, and there's this buy-in. Everybody knows that this is where we're headed. This is where we're getting to. So when you do that, people are more likely to latch on, especially when they understand what is needed for them. So if you're telling someone to change and the person doesn't understand why they need to change, they'll just be looking at you. There'll be a lot of resistance. Trust me, it has happened in so many cases. If someone cannot tie in their work to the goals of the organization, how it improves the organization in terms of success, and how it also improves them in terms of career growth, they will not buy in. And so you see yourself, spending so much in terms of budget and you're not achieving any results. So set clear goals, make sure that that is clearly stated what is in need for them, and then communicate that effectively. Another thing that we can do to ensure that the culture of collaboration and inclusivity is, among employees from different ages and technological backgrounds, is to encourage diversity. So you're in an organization and it's clear that we are open to different ideas. People can come up with different perspectives. The best ideas can come from anyone. But if you're going, let me give you an example. You're going for a brainstorming session, right? And you just picking the heads of units and heads of functions to sit in the place and come up with a strategy on how to move things forward. And you're not taking into consideration the other guys that may be from different age brackets or even from different generations. When you have more people around the table, they're able to share their perspectives, they are able to share different ideas, and then it moves things forward. Another area where I would like to talk on in terms of mentoring and training. Very, very important. If you have employees from different age groups, it's important that there is mentoring and there is reverse mentoring. But we talked about that a lot of times, training, but we should not forget the use of modern technologies. I like the part where Antoinette talked about encouraging people to use less paper. That is so phenomenal. Like if you try it, it works like magic. You know, if people are used to doing things, you know, using paper to get things approved, and they come to you to get it approved, and you tell them, well, you have to send it via email. They don't have a choice. When you build in policies where people have to use technology to communicate, to engage within the organization, they don't have a choice and they will just move on forward. So organizing, you can also organize team building activities, you know, where everybody comes together to share and feel comfortable with one another. So building that culture, first of all, is for organizations to say, how do we want our organization to be? How do we want our people to feel when they are working? When they understand these, set the goals, widely communicate the goals, and then drive it across the business. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I think it was really, really clear. We picked up a lot of stuff while you were speaking. So diversity, and we're going to talk a bit more about that in the next few minutes. And we also need to be able, leaders need to be able to lead by example. So you've set up these policies, you've changed the procedure, you've done all that, but you're not really acting the talk. It won't really get the buy-in of people. So it's very, very important for leaders to do that and to in fact, that alone is a lot of communication, because that shows where the company is headed and that the company is really embracing technology. Now, talking about embracing, I have another comment or a question actually, and this will be for Shola. The person is anonymous. So the question goes, what is IABC doing about or doing with regards to embracing the Nigerian public sector to join and move with the use of modern technology? Did you get that question? Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Thanks for the question. I think, first of all, the embracing modern technology, I think that's something that the Ministry of Information and Communication, ICT, is actually on that quest with the government. I think that's much more in their area. It's not our type of communication, which is about, you know, messaging and all that. It's that aspect of the practice, or rather that aspect of how would I say, of professionalism is actually mandated to handling that. And then our role as communications practitioners is just really to advocate for best practice in terms of communication and engagement. So it's not so much just about asking you to adopt technology for the sake of technology's sake, but it's really just about being more intuitive, more audience-centric, and being more targeted and in terms of how you communicate. So if technology does advance the cause of communication, if technology does enable you to share information in a shareable manner, if it does bridge the gap between you and your audiences and your target groups, then why not? You know, so but it has to be fit for purpose. It has to be situated to the context of the people that you're trying to reach, and it has to be usable. It has to be functional. So every professional organization advocates for what's best in their profession. Why we're even having this conversation around the digital divide is because we recognize that it may even be a barrier for practitioners if we don't continue to upskill ourselves in this space. Some of us, we've transitioned into, like when I started out, it was hard copy, it was emails, it was in person. And then now we've moved to social media as a tool for communication. I had to really come out of my fog, my PR fog, and go deep into that. So I've gone deep into social media as well, and digital and online. And then the AI world is coming up as well. And that comes up with its own new challenges. So we continue to advocate for the best that is possible of the profession, but with an eye on the goal. In other words, not technology for the sake of technology, not adopting just for the sake of it. It's about what is the scale of the problem, what's the nature of the challenge, how is this going to help us achieve our goals? And if it will, yes, then let's go ahead and do it. And I'll just say finally, why I wouldn't say in Nigeria, I don't think the adoption of, this is my personal view, let me just say that. I don't think our problem is the adoption of technology. I think it's our commitment to doing things right. As we saw very recently, you can have all the technology in the world. If you do not have the commitment to do what is right, then you won't. So that is my own personal view. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shola. I think that was really apt. Thanks for responding to that question. So we have taking the discussion into engagement and inclusion, right? So it's very important to ensure that we include all generations in the workplace to ensure that, you know, we just obtain the maximum value we can get to our parent company and for better performances as well. Maybe I will give Genika this, or Antoniette. Let me see who spoke last. Okay, so I'll give this question to Genika. So how can employers create opportunities for employees to learn from each other and share knowledge across generations? We've also talked a little bit about that, but any other thing to share?
Yes, thank you, Tombra. Yes, I've touched on this a little bit, but you know, let's talk more about mentorship programs within organizations. So your engagement and communication strategy, or let's say your engagement strategy you have to include mentorship programs as part of your engagement strategy. You want people from one generation to, people from different generations to share knowledge and learn from one another. So what you need to do is to enable that by creating opportunities for them to interact. So for instance, you can have knowledge sharing sessions, you can have mentorship programs, you can have reverse mentoring or even speed mentoring, where people from the younger generation are also mentoring people from the older generation. Now, I'd like to say at this point that mentorship doesn't mean that someone older must mentor someone that is younger. It's about the knowledge that you have that you want to transfer to someone, or something that you really need, the knowledge that you need, and you're looking for someone that is an expert in that area. The person can be from the younger generation. So you have to have an open mind to learn from everyone or anyone. So it's important that we have opportunities like that. For instance, if you also have projects, let's say there's a transformation project that is ongoing in your organization, why don't you build cross-functional teams? Why do you just limit it to people that know it? Why don't you bring in people from other functions, from other generations, for instance, to come together and work on that project? What this does is that it forces people to learn. I remember there are some projects that I handled in the past when I was, at the earlier stage of my career. And as I was entering into the projects, I didn't have an idea of what they were about to talk about, but or what the project was all about, or even how to go about some of the tasks. But working with others, having training sessions, having knowledge sharing sessions, awareness sessions as well, would open you to new ideas and knowledge about how things should be done. So employers need to create opportunities. I think that word create is deliberate, because they don't just happen. If you drop a strategy and keep it in your laptop, saved in one folder, you don't work on it, it's just as good as nothing is happening. So when you create this when you design these strategies, make sure that you execute. Create opportunities. Let people understand that this needs to be done. Be focused on it. Make sure you follow through, monitor the results, and that's it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Genika. So we don't just prefer these solutions on paper. We need to actually execute them and see that they come to life. I think that's a very good way to respond to that. So I'll take, except we have more questions, I will just take the last question for Antoniette now. And just in 1 minute, we're rounding up now. So we know time has been fast spent, but I've had a lot of fun, and I can see a lot of people, and I think everyone listening, it's been a fun one. So for Antoniette now, so what steps can companies take to transform their organizational structures and culture to be more inclusive of employees of all ages and technological backgrounds? Final thoughts on that one.
Yeah, thanks, Tombra. I think that a lot of checkbox exercises will not work in this regard. You embrace and act like an employer of equal opportunities, and you really do that, right? You don't do it as a checkbox. You actually, I think the culture starts from the hiring process as well. You shape, like one of my panelists said, I don't know whether it was Shola or Genika, you shape the values. I think it was Genika, you say this is how we want to be. This is the kind of culture that we want to have. And then you go look for those kind of people right from the hiring process. If you are an organization transforming, right? Or in the process of transforming, I think looking for curious and creative people should be at the hallmark of everything that you do, because they're going to have to juggle a lot of unconventional ways of doing and being with a mixed culture in a transformation program. So making sure that you really embrace that. If you say you're an employer of equal opportunities, that you don't treat that as a checkbox exercise. Another thing is that if you define how the teams communicate within the new structure, you measure them effectively on, or you measure them on effective communication. So for instance, if you know that you're shifting, right, a certain way in an organization, then maybe some of the KPIs need to reflect that, even if it's for the first year or the first 18 months or something, just so that people can get measured and rewarded for good behavior, for adopting things, in the way that we want it to be. Something that motivates somebody than hitting all their KPIs and getting all the benefits from doing that. Because if you don't weave it back into the KPIs of those people, you may not really get any shift or any change or any real outcomes that you're looking for. Then be intentional on balancing gender. This means that if you have a team that is growing and it is predominantly one gender, you should actively look to grow it with teammates of the other gender. Now, I saw a comment saying that gender is somehow becoming synonymous with woman, the word woman. And I want to be careful to say that it is not. We should keep it as neutral as possible. If your team is predominantly female, please go out and look for a male to bring that balance into the team, right? If your team is predominantly male, please go and look for a female based on merit, not because it's based on gender now, right? And then you can there must be intentional balancing, because like, I think it was Ginika that mentioned that we can learn from each other. So not just from an age perspective, but even from a gender perspective. Men think very differently from women. Women process things very differently from men. And there are benefits to having both genders on a team.
Both. Antoinette, thank you so much for that. So I think so it's very important for us to have that balancing right and really get the best value from everybody. I'll pick a few. We're rounding up about now, so I'll pick a few comments. And you talked about gender and including diversity and inclusion. So Carol Songa is saying, in terms of D&I and the digital divide in multi-generational workplace, I think it's also important to consider disabled people. And it's something that is really, really important in the workspace that we are. It's good to identify them and also take them into consideration, even as we use technology, and make sure that they are part of the picture. The basic, so I'll take this other comment from, and this will be the last one. Thanks for the discussions. This is from Victoria Brown. The basic challenge in Nigeria is our attitude towards embracing technology. You're absolutely correct, and you're absolutely that. We just feel comfortable, and it's not just Nigeria. I think it's a global thing. You just feel comfortable in your comfort zone, and you just don't want to move on. Okay, so on that note, I'll give our panelists 1 minute to just 1 minute on the dot each. Just final thoughts, just one thing you want us to take away from this. I'll start with Shola, and then Ginika, and then Antoinette. Shola, quickly, just in less than a minute, actually, 10 seconds, please.
Okay.
What do you want to take?
Yeah, so I think for me,
yeah, go ahead, Shola.
My big takeaway is that I recall reading somewhere that the African Union is trying to create a single digital market for Africa by 2030. And they're going to try to hook everyone up, free movement of goods and services digitally. Digital transformation is not even a nice to have anymore. It's a must do. The world is just moving us ahead, whether we like it or not. And we saw that play out during the cashless policy, where people who had really functioned very well, thinking that, they could work both side by side. We had a situation whereby the opportunity to be non-digital was just removed from us, like with the snap of a finger. So the world that we're in right now, we don't really have a choice. So I would say, if you're someone, do a self-assessment of yourself. If you see that you're someone that needs support, look for that help where you can find it. Ask for help. Don't try and struggle on your own. Everybody goes through this learning curve.
Yes.
But if we don't have a choice in it, we have to do it. Thank you.
Excellent. We have to do it. Ginika, over to you. Final thoughts? What do we take away? 10 seconds.
Okay, 10 seconds. That's amazing. Okay, so I would like to say that
This is Gen Z now.
The world is moving at a very fast pace. You know, that's our reality. And digital transformation, we cannot ignore it. So my advice is that we embrace it, try to understand it, and make it work for us. But one of the other key things I would like to say is that organizations, they need to build digital transformation into their strategy. And when they build it into their strategy, they need to act on it. So don't just build it in, don't just, design a plan and, shift it to the other side. Okay, there's no money, or we can even just try and do things the way we've always done it. Let's embrace technology, act on it, and you see great results for your business. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Antoinette, over to you. Final words, 10 seconds.
So final words is that I think in everything we should have human-centered leadership at the heart of everything that we're doing, right? It's just human beings at the end of the day. And so we should treat each other, as such. Also, we should look for making sure that we're checking in with our team members and how they're coping, right? And I think the last part of that would be that we should embrace curiosity and creativity. And it starts with people who are passionate about doing great work in whatever area or specific industry that they find themselves, and the rest will follow.
Excellent. The rest will follow. So thank you very much, panelists. I mean, I would have liked to go on and on and on, but because of time, we have to respect everybody's time. So I can see Cynthia eBay and Margaret Alabi, they've added their voice to the discussion section. Oh, well done, well done. Okay, so we're rounding up now. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, panelists. Thanks, all members of the audience. We've picked up a lot on how to really make it better in the workspace that we are, how to bridge the digital divide in our workspace, and to ensure that all employees are valued, we show caring at work, we are empathetic, we carry everyone along, and I'm positive that with all this that we'll discuss, we'll be able to make our workspace and even the world a better place for everyone. So our distinguished attendees, thank you all for your participation. The social media handles of our panelists will be on the screen. We can contact them after this and just, we can learn a few more things. I'm going to be going into their LinkedIn and chatting them away and really learning a few more things. So let me especially recognize all IABC members online. Because of time, I won't be able to really mention all of you, and there's so many as well. So from the African region and the Asia Pacific, Europe as well. And we have some from North America that are also on the call. Thank you so much. And of course, our hosts, the West Africa Interest Group. Thank you so much for bringing this. And I think it's been a very, very beneficial and enjoyable session. So see you all at the next webinar session. Stay tuned, same station. We'll reach out to you on the next webinar. Take care. Have a good evening. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye. Thank you so much. Thanks.
We are IABC, a global community of communication professionals practicing with integrity and passion. We're diverse. Diverse is the industries and disciplines we work in. With thousands of members on every continent, we're alive with knowledge and experience. We're the voice of communication practice. We use the power of communication to connect people to ideas, to job opportunities, and to other professionals. We spark conversations. We create connection. And we have fun. We're focused on insights and results. Sure, we like cool creative, but it has to stick in the hearts and minds of our audience and provide value to our organization. We're about global best practices that are current and relevant. We live by a code of ethics. We support a global certification program. And we recognize the best of the best around the world. So, what's in it for you? Well, start with our lively and varied networking events, our regional and international conferences, our certification programs, and our award shows. Whether you're an experienced communicator or new to the field, Whether you work for a corporation, government, agency, or nonprofit, IABC fits your personality and your professional goals. IABC. We use communication to engage, influence, counsel, and execute. We connect communicators around the world. We are IABC.